supporting and will continue to support the One China policy. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed expected to form a new government in September after his party's recent election victory. And the UN warns of a global food insecurity crisis as the pandemic year is marked by an increase in hunger worldwide.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party won the most seats in Ethiopia's parliamentary election held last month. He is expected to form a government in September. But what will be his priorities? And what are the expectations? What expectations do the citizens have? CGTN's Gerum Chala explores.
The National Electoral Board of Ethiopia has already declared Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party the winner of the 6th general elections of the nation. The party won 410 out of the 436 seats of parliament. People now expect the elected leadership to deliver on all fronts, including peace, economic growth, education and more.
As the youth of the nation, we support Prosperity Party 100% and would like to see all kinds of changes for the party, especially in making Ethiopia a prosperous nation in Africa and the world. We expect them to finish the construction of our grand dam and generate power. I hope we'll maintain unity.
What we expect from the Prosperity Party is addressing the skyrocketing prices on everyday items. People are being seriously affected by the ever-soaring prices. We elected a party believing that it will address all these issues.
I want the winning party to look at the youth of this country. Most of us are unemployed, and we want to change that status as soon as possible.
Over the next 5 years, Abiy's party has already set out plans to transform the nation. What is known as homegrown economic reform is set to take the country's economy to the next level by focusing on the mining, agriculture, industrial sectors, as well as the energy sector. This is, of course, alongside the Prime Minister's Green Legacy initiative of planting billions of tree seedlings every year. But the nation also prides itself for holding what the authorities have called the first free and fair election after decades of failed polls. The head of the Ethiopian National Electoral Board says the nation has achieved the formation of an independent electoral institution.
Above and beyond everything, all of our stakeholders have learnt a lot because they have passed through this election process with us. They have learned how to accept our decisions, even if they were not convinced. There were no shortcuts to this. This is how we are supposed to build an independent institution for the nation. Many things were new to us, but all is now behind us, and I would like to acknowledge the efforts of stakeholders for working with us and walking the talk with us for the country to see free and fair elections.
Still, an opposition boycott, the war in northern region of Tigray, ethnic violence and logistical challenge in some areas overshadowed the election. Voting did not take place in 3 of Ethiopia's 10 regions. The Electoral Board says it will stage elections in the remaining areas next September. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
A new United Nations Food Security Assessment report says that 1 in every 3 people globally faced hunger in 2020. The report also reflects a sharp rise in the number of people starving globally. The UN officials attributed the crisis to the coronavirus pandemic, conflict and climate change. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has more on that.
The report says the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, conflict and climate change have contributed to increased food insecurity worldwide. United Nations officials told reporters that even though the pandemic caused economic recessions globally, hunger was still a problem even before the outbreak.
One of the things that this report does is combine the different drivers. No? So we start with the typical drivers that we have been analyzing, which is conflict, climate extremes and variability, and economic downturns and slowdowns. And we see how many of those happen at the same time. And in the region you are talking normally will be more than one or more than two of those drivers happening simultaneously. And that's where the challenge is bigger because it exacerbates even more the conditions.
The most affected regions include Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. According to the index, Asia has the highest number of affected people, with 418 million undernourished people, followed by Africa with 282 million people facing food insecurity. Both Latin America and the Caribbean have 60 million people affected in their regions.
While we are saving lives, we must invest in changing people's lives and in minimizing conflict. I think there is this need for political will, this political commitment, like the SG's call for ceasefire, but even more so to make sure that we kind of reduce some of these conflicts so that needs can actually come down.
The statistics reveal that children have suffered severe abnormalities due to lack of enough food and a proper diet. Malnutrition has subjected them to stunted growth, obesity and emaciation. A third of women within the reproductive age are also said to be anemic. The United Nations wants to end hunger across the world by 2030. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Africa has recorded an unprecedented rise in hunger, with an estimated 21% of the population being food insecure. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, over 280 million people affected by malnutrition are in Africa. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy reports.
The 2021 State of Food Security Report highlights a huge increase in hunger in Africa. In many parts of the continent, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to severe economic recession and hampered access to food.
This report shows that millions worldwide are now suffering from the devastating effects of COVID-19 on food systems.
The pandemic alone is not to blame for the food and nutrition crisis. As this year's report reminds us, conflicts, climate change, economic recessions are also driving food insecurity and malnutrition.
The report says that even before the pandemic, hunger was already spreading fast across much of Africa.
How can we accept that millions upon millions of people go hungry every day in a world that produces enough food to feed its entire population?
African nations affected by conflict could see worsening hunger unless action is taken now.
Again, it is us human beings that cause these conflicts for individual, national or other egoistic reasons. This destroys livelihoods, colleagues, and it affects production, it affects supply chains, it affects governance, and it also leads to investors shying away from these countries, these regions, these areas. All of this has to stop if we want to really tackle all the root causes of hunger.
Now is the time for bold ideas, bold commitments, and bold leadership to do things that have never been done before. This is true for global health security and for transforming our food systems.
The report has urged policymakers to address poverty and structural inequalities by boosting the food value chain in poor communities. Other key recommendations include strengthening climate resilience and implementing social protection measures that will assist families so that they do not have to sell their meager assets in order to buy food. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Dozens have been killed after a hospital fire in Iraq. Officials have put the death toll at 92, with more than 100 others injured. An investigation has now been launched into the deadly blaze at the hospital which was treating COVID-19 patients. Fu Xinri reports from Baghdad.
According to the information of local media outlet, the fire broke out at midnight and quickly spread to surrounding area in Hussein Teaching Hospital, Nasiriyah. That's the capital of the Kar province, South Iraq. Hussein Teaching Hospital is the designated COVID-19 medical treatment facility in the province, and this had brought immediate impact to local pandemic control. The neighboring Missan province has announced that it would receive the injured patients and provide proper treatment. The U.S., Iran, Egypt, and Jordan has expressed condolences in diplomatic channels. Iraqi President Barham Saleh said in a tweet that this tragic accident of Hussein Teaching Hospital is generated by long-term corruption and mismanagement that undermine the lives of Iraqi people. Prime Minister Mustafa Kadhimi demanded relative ministries to carry out a thorough investigation into the accident and decide the source of fire. This is not the first time a similar accident took place in Iraq. On April 24th, a COVID-19 designated hospital in Baghdad was also destroyed by fire initiated by an oxygen cylinder explosion. As the summer comes with temperature of over 45 degrees Celsius, lack of infrastructure and poor management will probably generate more risks in the coming days.
Well, let's now go to Hannah Vivier for a look at the business news. Hannah.
Thank you, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business news. South Africa's mining production jumps 22% year-on-year in May. And Kenya's horticulture earnings dropped $58 million in the first half of the year.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Welcome back. Time now for the business news. South Africa's mining production rose almost 22% year-on-year in May. That's according to preliminary data released by the country's stats agency on Tuesday. The data shows the largest contributions were made by platinum group metals, which went up 27%. Gold rose by almost 45%. Iron ore jumped 48%, while manganese ore climbed 40%. In the meantime, seasonally adjusted manufacturing production decreased by 5.6% in the 3 months ended May compared with the same period last year. Horticulture earnings in Kenya dropped by about $58 million in the first half of the year. The horticulture sector is a major foreign exchange earner in Kenya, alongside tea and diaspora remittances. However, in the last year, travel restrictions, regulatory changes, and closure of major international export markets due to the COVID-19 pandemic have affected the sector's performance. The Directorate of Horticultural Data shows that Kenya earned $713 million between January and June, down $771 million last year. This is the steepest decline in earnings for the industry in the last 5 years. The value of flowers dropped to around $463 million, with fruits declining from $115 million in the previous period to $111 million. The value of vegetables went up to $138 million. South Africa's national power utility Eskom has put forward a $10 billion plan to multilateral banks and agencies to help it move to renewable energy production. The development is significant as the utility generates more than 90% of South Africa's electricity using coal. With the details, here's CGTN's Angela Coppola.
Eskom has decided to make the transition as it hasn't been able to maintain the existing coal plants as well as complete new projects on time.
As we shut down our power plants, where are the opportunities and what are the opportunities to repower them with renewables, to repurpose them? But we're also looking at accelerating the renewables plan, looking at alternative options for energy security, for microgrids, for grid strengthening.
Climate change activists have been pushing the utility to move to sustainable energy sources to power the country's electricity grid.
If you look at a lot of the economic modeling and the systems analysis around what the best, most affordable, most job-creating and reliable energy system is, it's a renewable energy future, one that's predominantly renewable, solar and wind with battery storage and the likes.
Not everyone agrees that renewables are the solution, specifically when it comes to dispatchable or baseload electricity.
Unless you've got a very large battery energy storage system, which hasn't been made to work commercially yet at the level we're looking at, or you've got some kind of backup power, renewables won't meet your need. If you just had PV, for example, PV can't meet the evening peak because the sun's not shining.
This isn't stopping Eskom from working with renewables in the short term as the coal-fired power stations reach their end of life. Finding the funding for the transition is a key focus.
The terms that we've been discussing with a lot of these financiers as well is very, very concessional, highly concessional loans, long payback periods, payment holidays, low interest rates. So that's what we're looking at. And on the side, in parallel, we're looking at the strategy to resolve the debt issues.
Eskom says it's got a plan to move from coal-fired power stations to renewable energy. The question now is how quickly it can do it and who's going to pay for it. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's head over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has moved closer to joining the East African community after an assessment by a verification team. The team spent 8 days in the eastern city of Goma and is expected to write a report about their findings on the DRC's suitability for admission to the regional bloc. Reporting from Kinshasa, here CGTN's Chris Ochamringa.
Establishing whether the DRC conforms with the criteria of admission of foreign countries to the community. Under the East African Community Treaty, all countries seeking to join the bloc must follow practices of good governance, the rule of law, democracy and human rights. The DRC President, Felix Tshisekedi, hailed the progress made by the community in integrating his country. The verification mission is expected to write a report about its findings and submit it to the community's Council of Ministers. That report will then be given to the heads of state of the East African community for a final decision on the DRC's admission to the regional bloc. If approved, the DRC will become the 7th member of the bloc. The other member states are Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. The DRC's entry into the community will ease trade with those countries and enable its citizens to move freely without requiring visas. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Over in West Africa, the Nigerian government is forecasting a budget size of $34 billion for 2022. Finance, Budget and National Planning Minister Zainab Ahmed disclosed this after the cabinet approved the 2022 to 2024 medium-term expenditure framework as well as a fiscal strategy paper, which are to underpin the country's budget for 2022 through to 2024. Reporting from Lagos, here is CGTN's Deji Badmos.
At $34 billion, the projected 2022 budget is 3% higher than the current budget. Also higher is the projected budget deficit, which is estimated at $13.7 billion, slightly above the threshold of 3% specified in the country's Fiscal Responsibility Act, FRA.
The FRA empowers Mr. President to exceed the threshold if, in his opinion, the nation faces national security threats, and it is our opinion and FEC agreed that we can exceed it.
Nigeria has been borrowing massively to fund its budget deficit for some years now. The government says it will still engage in new borrowings to finance the 2022 budget deficit.
The deficit is going to be financed by new foreign borrowing, and domestic borrowing, both domestic and foreign, in the sum of 4.89 trillion, and privatization proceeds of 90.73 billion, and drawdowns from existing project-tied loans of 635 billion.
Nigeria's debt level has been a big talking point in the country, partly because of the huge chunk of money spent on servicing the debts. Many have also raised concerns about the country's debt-to-revenue ratio, which has been quite high.
I just want to state that the projected debt-to-revenue ratio in the report is 43%, which, of course, we know Nigerians all have concerns about. But the actual debt-to-revenue ratio in 2019 was 58%, so this is an improvement over the preceding year, over 2019. In 2020, the ratio was up to 85%. So 2022 is a significant improvement on 2020.
The pressure of the conversation here is not so much around budget deficit as we think of it. Many countries in the world, especially in view of global recovery, would to a large extent borrow more money, to a large extent run into budget deficit. All right, but what would set country A apart from country B would be what exactly are you investing those monies on?
Other key macro assumptions of the 2022 budget include crude oil benchmark price of $57 per barrel, crude oil production of 1.88 million barrels per day, inflation rate of 13%, exchange rate of 410 to the dollar, and a GDP growth rate of 4.20%. Some analysts, though, think some of the assumptions are not realistic.
Take, for instance, the exchange rate at 410. That's the official rate, all right? We all know to a large extent very few businesses do engage or transact, if at all, the official rate. The fact that we're not being realistic on the nature of some other parameters would always affect the quality of our fiscal planning and the quality of our fiscal framework and dynamics around executing the fiscal policy in the sense.
The president has since sent the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to Parliament for consideration and passage. After lawmakers pass the documents, the 2022 budget will then be formally drafted and presented to the Parliament for vetting and approval. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, Egypt has welcomed Russia's decision to lift the ban on charter flights to and from Egypt. This follows a presidential decree issued by the Kremlin. The ban came into effect back in 2015 after the crash of a Russian passenger plane in Sharm el-Sheikh, which killed all on board and was presumed to be an act of terrorism. With the details, here's CGTN's Yasser Kim.
Egypt is bracing for the influx of Russian travelers. Russia had continuously postponed the return of its tourists to the North African nation since its passenger jet crash over Sinai in 2015. Egyptian authorities have been working hard on improving security measures since that fateful day.
Egypt had to meet a lot of requirements, so it firstly started from the national security of Egypt, and besides as well like protecting all the tourists worldwide coming to Egypt. So the government had to escalate it up and to upgrade all their security infrastructure across all the aircrafts, and as well on the at each of the port or each of the airports dealing with all the nationalities. There was involvement from different institutions in a global wise, ensuring that all the standard up to the most according to all the different benchmarks from international airport has been met in order to ensure the safest and the most efficient security systems are in place within the Egyptian government.
Before the flight ban in 2015, more than 3 million Russians visited Egypt per year, the highest of any nationality. Goldman Sachs estimates Russian tourism could pump $3 billion of badly needed hard currency into the economy. That's nearly as much as total tourism revenue for 2020. The tourism industry has always been a top hard currency earner for the state budget and employs millions of people. That's why the North African country had to seek alternatives during the absence of foreign visitors to keep the sector afloat.
This was Egypt's strategy since 2015. They tried to firstly to meet the requirement of the Russian government, and beside as well to try to open different source market, of which Egypt has started like approaching like the different Western countries of Europe, Indeed, as well, we started focusing a lot on the Arab countries and the neighbor countries and encouraging the Arabian, which started to represent around 30%, between 25 to 30% from the total arrivals are coming from the Arab region. And in addition, after COVID-19, there was different strategies starting from the staycations or promoting Egypt for the Egyptians, creating new different type of products as well, creating and opening new destinations.
The government is forecasting 1 million Russian visitors before the end of the year, pushing tourism revenue up to $9 billion from $4 billion in 2020. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
China's state-owned enterprises have shown record-breaking performance in the first half of 2021. That's according to State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission of the State Council. In the past 6 months, these firms realized over 17 trillion yuan in operating revenues. Net profit exceeded 1 trillion yuan for the first time ever at a 2-year average growth rate of over 20%. The regulator says a strong showing is thanks to the deepening government's 3-year action plan for SOE reform in China. Well, that's all the business news we have for you for now, but coming up on Global Business, Ghana is looking to pilot its central bank digital currency in 2 months' time. Officials from the country's apex bank say the introduction of the currency is crucial, especially following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be analyzing the implications of this move and much more at the top of the hour. But for now, let's take a look at what else is coming up on Africa Live with Beatrice.
Hannah, thank you. Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. South Africa aims to surpass Rio 2016 medal count at the Tokyo 2020 Games.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
South Africa's Olympic team is looking to improve on their medal haul from the Rio Games, despite the team's preparations being hugely disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic in the last 1 year. The Rainbow Nation is still optimistic they will challenge for more medals at this year's sporting showpiece in Tokyo. CGTN's CS Duplessis tells us more.
Team South Africa certainly look the part with their stylish new kit sponsor, but looking good doesn't always produce results. That comes from preparation, execution, and big match temperament. The 250-member team definitely possesses ample amounts of BMT, and that's why the SASCOC president is confident of medals in Tokyo.
Look at Akani Sambine's results in the 100 meters. So we are pinning our hopes on those athletes to come through. We're very disappointed with Caster, of course, but we know in our hearts that our athletes in the swimming pool and on the athletics track and even in the rowing stand a chance, and the rugby stand a chance of winning, and our thoughts and our pride and our passions behind them.
The mostly vaccinated team will be subjected to several tests before departing, but they'll all be eager to get to Tokyo and represent the Rainbow Nation with pride after a frustrating 12-month delay.
You know, it seems like it helped many of people to kind of reset and refocus. So I think we're in for great games. Unfortunately, we won't have spectators, but we are in the middle of a pandemic, so, that's understandable.
All eyes will be on the reigning 400-meter champion, Wade van Niekerk, who has had his fair share of ups and downs since blasting his way to a new world record, to see if he can indeed defend his title.
I think he's going to be a little undercooked in race preparation, but you never count Wade out. I think the guy's got a mental ability to rock up on the day and produce. He will hurt himself to get what he wants. He's not afraid to do that. We'll see him in the final, and then he's also got that white line, mentality. He steps on that track and he's just going to absolutely push his body to the limit.
And without the likes of medal winners from 2016 like Caster Semenya and Luvo Manyonga, as well as surfing star Jordy Smith, it'll be up to the usual suspects to bring back the medals.
There are the usual suspects like the Wade van Niekerk. You know, he's battling with injuries a bit, but you'll never write him off. You've got a Connie Sambine, he's going to his second Olympics. Then you've got Chad Leclerc. I mean, it seems like he's kind of heading towards the last bit of his career. But he's one of those kind of classy kind of people that can produce the goods.
South Africa's best ever medal tally was achieved on 3 occasions: in Antwerp in 1920, Helsinki in 1952, and in 2016 in Rio, where the team claimed a total of 10. Expectations are high to surpass the previous best haul, and with motivation in abundance heading into Tokyo, there's every chance the team from the Rainbow Nation could indeed claim several medals well into the double figures. CS Du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Kenyan Olympics team continues to jet out in batches, and the latest group to leave for Japan are the sprinters. The national women's 400 meters record holder Helen Siombua, together with speedsters Ferdinand Omanyala and Mark Otieno, will be joining with the team already in Kurume City ahead of their pre-Olympic camp in Japan. Omanyala set a 100 meters national record of 10.02 seconds, followed by Mark Otieno's 10.05 seconds at their last attempt to qualify for the Olympic Games earlier this month. Kenya is known for medal and long-distance running, where they dominate from the 800 meters to the marathons. The sprinters are now turning heads with each performance on the track and have promised to challenge for podium places in Tokyo.
I'm so excited. I didn't train today, so my coach knew. So we are really looking forward to reach at Kurume and hopefully just to work in the next 3 weeks for the Olympics. My message to Kenya is that still God is in control and God will come at the right time. So I'm looking forward to go to the Olympics and to reach there safely, and just to tell them just to continue to pray for us.
I'm feeling great. It's been a journey and now it's becoming real. Going to Japan for the Olympic Games, now it's real because now you're going to the airport, you're flying out, going to show the world what Kenyans are made of in sprints. I feel fast, I feel strong, so what I can tell Kenyans just to glue themselves on the TV and wait for some miracles ahead.
The International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach has praised Tokyo 2020's efforts in preparing for a secure and safe games as the start date of the world's biggest sporting event approaches. This was Bach's first face-to-face meeting with the committee since finishing his 3-day quarantine after arriving in Tokyo. Organizers last week announced that spectators would be banned from nearly all venues. The host city, Tokyo, entered a fresh state of emergency on Monday, which will last until the 22nd of August, as authorities aim to curb rising numbers of COVID-19 infections. Recent rises in Tokyo have been particularly worrisome amid a vaccination rollout that got off to a slow start and has faced supply glitches after speeding up. Only about 28% of the population has received at least one shot of a COVID-19 vaccine.
Your organizing committee and all your staff members are doing a fantastic job in the preparations of this Olympic and Paralympic Games Tokyo 2020. You have managed to make Tokyo the best ever prepared city for Olympic Games. And the Japanese people can have confidence in all the efforts we are undertaking to make these games for them secure and safe, with all the intensive, most strict COVID countermeasures, with the great vaccination program we have been undertaking worldwide. So all this is in solidarity with the Japanese people.
Here's a quick recap of our headlines this hour. At least 45 people have now died in violence that has engulfed parts of South Africa. Around 800 people have been arrested in the unrest that began last Thursday. Demonstrators have clashed with police and looted shops. The military has now been deployed to help the overstretched police force. President Cyril Ramaphosa has described it as the worst violence witnessed in South Africa since the 1990s, before the end of apartheid. In Nigeria, authorities in the commercial capital Lagos say the city faces a potential third wave of COVID-19 infections. The country has seen a gradual rise in new cases. The news comes after the Nigerian Center for Disease Control recently confirmed the country's first case of the Delta variant of the virus. And a new United Nations Food Security Assessment report says that 1 in every 3 people globally faced hunger in 2020. The report also reflects a sharp rise in the number of people starving globally. The UN officials attributed the crisis to the coronavirus pandemic, conflict and climate change. And we leave it there on this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen and follow us on our digital media platform. Thank you for watching. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Hannah Vivier is up next with Global Business. Bye-bye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Africa. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Vivia. Let's take a look at what happened on the markets today. Another devastating day for South Africa's markets. To give you an indication of the extent of the unrest in the country, more than 40 people have been killed. Earlier on today, there was a report of the instant loss of jobs for 600 employees after their factory was looted and then burned to the ground. That and more such incidents caused major banks and retailers to shut their doors in some areas, leading the losses on the JSE, where financials, which were down almost 4%. On the flip side, it was a good day for Egypt's EGX 30. It closed almost 2% higher, bucking the global trend, which saw investors turn bearish on news of U.S. consumer prices rising by the most in 13 years. That was a quick look at the markets. Now let's take a look at more news making headlines. Ghana is set to launch its first digital currency. Nigeria grapples with scrapping electricity subsidies amounting to millions. And the European Commission temporarily halts plans for a new digital tax following intense pressure from the United States. Our starting point tonight is in Ghana, where the government is looking to pilot its central bank digital currency in 2 months' time. Also known as the e-cedi, the digital currency is expected to operate in a sandbox in the interim before being introduced to general public as legal tender for financial transactions. First Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Maxwell Opoku-Afari, says the e-cedi is crucial, especially following COVID-19, as the outbreak has quickened the drive towards a cashless economy. Opoku-Afari says the pilot phase will be determined by how easily the public accepts the digital currency, as well as how soon the operational dynamics come to the fore. Well, joining us for analysis of this new development from Ghana is Dr. Adu Owusu-Sarkodie, who is an economics lecturer at the University of Ghana. Greeting to you, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us. Adu, what are your thoughts on this move by Ghana's central bank to introduce a digital currency into the economy?
I think it's a good thing. Ghana is going digitization. We are trying to go cashless. If anything at all, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated that we need to go cashless and reduce the interpersonal relations. So it is a good thing that I think I should support. The mobile money transactions in Ghana has been successful. So with this coming on board to support it, I think it's a good initiative.
Adu, how do you anticipate the Ghanaian public might respond to digital currency?
There is some level of skepticism about this because Ghana's economy is largely informal, about 80% informal. The banking and insurance penetration in Ghana is less than 30%. And so we have a low financial literacy rate. And therefore, there is some amount of doubt about how the public is going to embrace this. But there is some amount of hope given the level of mobile money transactions that we have. More than 80% of Ghanaians undertake mobile money transactions. So given this, I think that, yes, we need to do more with the campaign, but I'm sure with time, Ghanaians will accept it.
Well, let's just speak a little bit about what Ghana's central bank deputy governor had said. He had mentioned that the potential for the digital currency to shape future monetary policy. How do you foresee that playing out?
Yes, Ghana now has a coordinated payment system, I think, which will ensure efficiency, will bring some transparency, will make sure that we reduce the wastages in the system, and also plug all the loopholes in the black market. So this e-cash can also help, achieve this objective. So I think it's a good thing that we can do to help develop the economy.
On the global front, there have been reports of concern from some of the financial services industry, and I think they're concerned mostly about central banks having their own digital currencies. Do you think that the Central Bank of Ghana having a digital currency could disrupt the retail banking space in the country?
Yes, having a common currency has always been a very good objective, a very good thing to ensure intra-regional trade and inter-regional trade. We have seen the benefits of that from the European Union, and West Africa has been trying to introduce the ECO. The challenge here is to have the financial infrastructure and also have a common monetary system where we can coordinate all these activities. So with time, I'm sure we just have to put in the needed infrastructure, have the monetary system, common maybe central bank, coordinated activities, have common macroeconomic variables where we can coordinate all these things. So it is feasible. It might take some time, but I'm sure gradually we might go there. We might get there. That's why I'm happy about this piloting. So the piloting can bring out all these information that we need, whether it is good or bad, and the things that we need to know. And I'm sure that it's not all African countries that will integrate automatically or at the same time. We need to go the gradual way. So gradually we will get there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adu Owusu Sarkodie, who is an economics lecturer at the University of Ghana. Well, meanwhile, the Central Bank of Egypt has launched a $6.3 billion mortgage finance initiative that serves low and middle income citizens. The action follows the decree by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to provide housing units for these categories with subsidized prices and long-term installment payments. Under the initiative, low and middle income individuals will have access to secure loans from banks and mortgage companies with a decreased interest rate of 3% and a 30-year repayment period in order to purchase only fully finished housing units, according to Central Bank. The beneficiaries of this group have to pay a down payment that ranges between 15% and 20% minimum for the unit, with a price that ranges between $70,110 and $89,230. Well, meanwhile, the Egyptian Stock Exchange has begun trials of a new system that aims to improve accuracy, increase trading volumes, and boost foreign investment in Egyptian shares. The board is considering introducing an auction system to determine closing prices, a method used by some of the world's biggest exchanges. Reporting from Cairo, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The Egypt Stock Exchange current closing price system is based on the average share price throughout the trading session each day. However, the new mechanism under testing is the auction one that will determine the closing price for the day.
The new pricing system calculates the average price in the last half hour of trading. And not just the last half hour, but an average from every hour is considered during the day. The main element, though, is the average of the last hour to calculate a price that will open the market on the following day. The boss is restructuring regulations to refresh the market and make it highly efficient and professional. This reduces manipulation and gives more accurate assessments of each share price.
Egypt's stock exchange has been suffering from lack of activity and low foreign investment volumes. Furthermore, a number of initial public offerings or IPOs that would have stimulated the market has been postponed from 2020 till the end of 2021. This is to shore them from the contraction in the market that has been caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, officials have finalized 3 simulation sessions to test the new mechanism, which they hope would improve investor confidence. But some traders are worried.
We are surprised about how quickly they want to apply the new pricing mechanism. We need more time to understand the system and study it thoroughly. The haste by officials has made us traders a bit worried. Overall, it is a good initiative for the market, but we need to understand it clearly, all the technical details, to be able to apply it in our work.
The EGX board says it's addressing all concerns and is planning to introduce the auction pricing system beginning in August. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's commercial property sector remains in limbo as the country reports battling a third wave of COVID-19. Most corporate employees have been told to work from home since the first hard lockdown last year. A year later, many of these company buildings are still empty. CGTN Sumitra Naidu now tells us how this is impacting the economy.
Commercial property landlords lost over $2 billion in rental income during April and June 2020. Property owners agreed to write off the arrears as COVID relief.
And then some of the landlords were saying, well, I can't carry on paying the bond and the levies, I'm going to sell. So the cheaper ones seem to be doing a lot better, but we did do deferred payments with them.
But relief efforts are running thin on the ground. Most relief schemes have stopped.
We're basically relying on daily sales, which has put us in a terrible position to make rental. We are behind, but we have been in negotiations with our landlord all the time, just keeping up to date to say, okay, we can do this amount or that amount. And I think showing the willingness that we are able to try and pay something, she's been lenient with us. The sales has also dropped drastically, from what we used to do to what it is now. It's not good at all.
Employees of big companies, including the banks, were forced to work from home last year. A year later, they're being told to continue working from their homes until further notice. Some companies have even cancelled their leases, leaving scores of office blocks empty.
The Hyatt Hotel here in Rosebank has been closed since last year. This hotel caters for mostly business people coming into the CBD. There's still no clarity on whether this hotel will ever open again.
It's not an easy one because a lot of people are still struggling out there. I haven't had to go to the housing tribunal to report anybody because you kind of work with each other. People need accommodation. It hasn't been easy, and what can one say is that companies are just missing their employees. I actually don't know how it's going to improve, not with the lockdown and with so many people being affected by the COVID.
Credit data shows nearly 500 businesses have entered business rescue under the Companies Act since April last year. Heavily invested landlords will suffer the most, with little or no return on investments, and as the pandemic shows no signs of slowing. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's now take a look at your corporate headlines. Airtel Africa is considering seeking an extension or exemption from rules requiring it to cede a 30% stake in local subsidiaries to Kenyan investors by March 2024. Sidestepping the ownership rules could, however, force the multinational to pay $20 million for its expired license after the government demanded a settlement of the dues as a precondition to issue the exemption. The multinational says the new ownership rules published on April the 9th have an impact on two of its local subsidiaries, Airtel Networks Kenya Limited and Airtel Money Kenya Limited. The Bank of Kenya has completely taken over the regulation of mobile money services from the Uganda Communications Commission amidst customer anxiety. Customers have expressed fears that these new changes could affect safety of the cash, compromise the quality of services, and increase the cost of savings, deposits, withdrawal, and transfer of money. Figures from the Uganda Communication Commission shows that the total value of all mobile money transactions by all platforms hit US $8.2 billion in the fourth quarter of 2020. Volkswagen raised its long-term profitability target on Tuesday in a sign of the German automaker's growing confidence in managing the shift of electric and self-driving vehicles. Presenting its strategy until 2030, Europe's largest car maker also said that it expected half of its global vehicle sales to be battery-powered by that date. The targets came ahead of a huge package of climate policies the European Union plans to announce on Wednesday, possibly including a de facto ban of petrol-based vehicles from 2035. And finally, France's antitrust watchdog has fined Alphabet's Google $593 million for failing to comply fully with temporary orders it had given in a row with the country's new publishers. The U.S. search giant must now come up with proposals within the next 2 months on how it would compensate news agencies and other publishers for the use of their news. If it does not do that, the company would face additional fines of up to $1 million per day. Google says it's disappointed with the decision, but would comply. And those were your corporate headlines. Let's now take a short break and return. Here's what you can expect. Nigeria grapples with scrapping electricity subsidies amounting to millions of dollars. And ratings agency Fitch downgrades Tunisia's long-term debt to be negative.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head out now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sumitra Naidu. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how whole stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Welcome back. Well, Nigeria continues to struggle with subsidies which run into millions of dollars, and that's for its electricity. The International Monetary Fund has already raised the red flag over Nigeria's resumption of petrol subsidies, describing them as dangerous to the economy. Reporting from Nigeria's capital, Abuja, here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekelam.
Mohammed Ibrahim is a frozen foods trader and distributor in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. He sells a variety of proteins, including fish and chicken. His business is largely dependent on electricity supply to run effectively. That means he has to pay a high tariff, which has resulted in high operational costs.
The reason why prices are going up is not only electricity, and also the government did not take the right approach towards commercializing the electricity. Our market is paying heavily on electricity. That is why we are getting light. You know very well now the billing is no longer a single billing. Depends on the area you are and the numbers of hours you have light on daily basis.
Electricity consumers in Nigeria have been lamenting over tariff hikes since 2020. The increases are part of government's plan to gradually eliminate subsidy regime. Nigeria spends nearly $73 million monthly to subsidize electricity tariffs, far less than over $121 million spent in previous months.
To give you an idea of how huge it is, our oil revenues are less than 2 trillion naira in a year. So you can imagine we're spending a significant part of our oil revenues to subsidize the electricity market. Having said that, one of the reasons why you have a subsidy is also because the operators in the sector are not very efficient. So even though you are charged a tariff, the ability of the distribution companies to collect the revenues is quite low. We are averaging about 60% collection.
Since 1999, more than $16 billion has gone into boosting electricity supply in Nigeria, but distribution capacity still hovers around 4,700 megawatts, grossly insufficient for the nation's 200 million strong population. A recent report by the World Bank says Nigeria has the most number of people with no access to electricity, and this costs the nation economic annual losses of $29 billion.
10 to 12 million customers are the ones benefiting from this subsidy, not everybody. See a lot of benefits when government decides to allow tariff reviews happen as and when it should happen. It would be painful at first for a lot of the consumers. There are a lot of people that can't pay their bills. It will be very painful. But if we continue this trajectory, it will cause far more pain. So it's better that people realize what it is costing them, costing government, and at the end of the day, costing their pockets and their children, because these are debts that the government will pay at some point.
Nigeria's power sector continues to face a myriad of problems, including infrastructure constraints and tariff